This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Grant.
Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the Bax and Grant Sports Show. We were off yesterday, thanking the good Lord for a day without labor, as it were, on Labor Day. We were off for the day, enjoying time with our family and friends, and just getting a little needed rest and relaxation. So we are back after a long weekend and better than ever, and ready to kick it at another exciting week. It is the last week, Grant, before official regular season NFL football. Are you not entertained?
I'm very excited. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. We've been talking about it since, I don't know.
Probably June.
We've
been talking about football since we always talk about football.
Yeah, always talk about football. And once, it was over, everybody was sad.
It was very sad.
And then, we started talking about it months before preseason actually starts with the draft and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Teams rebuilding their rosters.
You have to.
And then all the speculation, and now it's time.
It is. The golden time. Thursday night, the New England Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers kick things off in the first game of the regular season this year. So we're excited to see that, but we'll talk about that I think about tomorrow. Tomorrow or Thursday we'll get to that. But we want to just remind all of you quickly that you can listen to us Monday through Friday right here on sportsradioamerica.com on Live 365 and tune in from 11 to 1 Central. You can also listen to us live on demand on Spreaker.com from 7 to 8 a.m. Central and on Periscope as well from 7 to 8 a.m. Central. Hello to all of you on Periscope. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Then you can catch our show on demand anytime on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and on Spreaker.com.
Then you can also find us on Facebook at the Bax and Grant Sports Show. You can also head over to Twitter and Instagram and find us at BG Sports Show. And then on Twitter, Baxter is at Baxter Colburn, and I am at Grant's Rant BGSS.
Absolutely. And a special shout out to all of you on Periscope again, as we see some of you continuing to comment. So thank you. Hello. We loved hearing from you. If you ever have any questions or comments about what we're talking about on the show, as long as they're appropriate, we're happy to mention them on the show or try to answer your questions in a timely fashion. And then just one other quick place. You can drop us an email, too, if you ever want to, during the show or after the show, if you have any comments or concerns or just any other just general inquiries of the show. You can shoot us an email at bgsportshow@gmail.com. Fun show for you today. David Kenyon will be on next segment to talk about fantasy football, giving his outlook on Week 1. David takes on Grant in Week 1 in our Bax and Grant Sports Show Fantasy Football League, so Grant is already shaking in his boots about that one.
Already taking the L.
The projection is actually relatively close, Grant. I don't know if you've looked at your projected scores yet.
No, I haven't looked at my team in 2 weeks.
You're going to want to, do that.
I know, I should.
Plenty of time. But anyway.
I have all week.
Well, you have until Thursday, depending on if you have any Pittsburgh Steelers or Patriot players. So, something to consider.
I have until Thursday.
Don't leave those points on the bench, Grant.
No, I don't want to do that. I'll have to take a good evaluation.
You will, absolutely. And then Connor Christensen will be on the show a little bit later also to offer his fitness tip as well. We missed him last week due to technical difficulties, but we got him back this week, so we're excited to have him on the show. But before we dive into either of those guests, Grant, we want to take a moment to look a little closer at the 53 men that will be representing the Green Bay Packers, or so we think will be representing the Green Bay Packers, because the waiver period and everything else officially concludes today at 4 p.m. Eastern.
And it always changes too.
There is. There's always an injury. There's always a trade. There's always something that happens. But hypothetically, these are the 53 guys for now that will be leading the Green Bay Packers. And for those of you that are wondering, well, why are they talking about the Packers specifically? Well, we are based in Wisconsin. We're based in Milwaukee. We are a Midwest sports show, but we do like to show our home state teams a little bit of extra love, but we do try to make sure to cover the national topics as well. So, well, Grant, the official roster is in. The Packers deciding to keep 3 quarterbacks, which we really weren't too surprised about.
No, not at all.
Matt Blanchard was cut. Brett Hundley was kept out of, then it's Aaron Rodgers and Scott Tolzien. Then the big thing I think that has a lot of people talking is the wide receivers. So, Jordy Nelson was placed on season-ending injured reserve.
Yes.
Which is very unfortunate, but that's unfortunately how the ACL tears sometimes.
Right. Season goes on. You really can't do much about that. Packer fans are handling it really well. The Packers organization's handling it really well. We're all just like, you know what? What happens, happens. You move on together as the organization. And so, all the players are like, it's okay, we'll make it. Rodgers like, it's okay, we're going to make it through. And if you look at the wide receiver core, it's not going to be too bad this year, even though, like, of course, yes, it'd be great to have Jordy Nelson healthy and ready a whole season.
Absolutely.
But, got to move on. And I think the Packers are still going to be okay in that wide receiver spot.
Well, looking at the wide receivers, they have Randall Cobb and Ty Montgomery, Devontae Adams, Jeff Janis. They recently had Miles White, but they have made space on their roster by releasing Miles White, Lord willing, practice squatting him. I don't know if that's officially been released or not.
They have 10 people on the practice squad right now, so they'd have to drop somebody.
So we'll see if they end up dropping one of their other guys or not. But the reason they did all of this, Grant, is to bring back one of, I'd say he's a fan favorite. They brought back a man known as James Jones, who played a few seasons with the Packers, had great success for all of his time in Green Bay.
Has a Super Bowl ring.
Had a monster year where he had over 15 touchdowns in one season.
And 1,000 drops.
I think
he had 12 touchdowns.
Was it 12?
I think he had 12.
I thought it was some astronomically high number.
Well, 12 is still an astronomically high number for being like the number 3 wide receiver.
It is, and that's why people were so surprised by it.
Well, he had like 12 touchdowns. He didn't have 15. You're giving him a little bit too much credit. But
okay. Well, either way, though, he is now back with the Packers, and he is considered. He had 14.
14?
14. I knew it was close. He had 14 back in 2012. He had 64 receptions for 784 yards and 14 touchdowns.
All right, solid. I was thinking about, I guess he only had 5 that season when they won the Super Bowl. Well, you know what? Yeah, 15, 14, 12. All the same. But I hate this player.
Why do you hate James Jones, Grant? Because
this player.
Ever since this news came out, I will be honest, I was very excited to see what Miles White could do this year for the Green Bay Packers. I was on the Miles White train. You were on the Jared Abbrederis train. Jared Abbrederis got cut and practice squatted by the Packers. I was like, hey, you know what? Miles, he fought hard last year. He got practice squatted, which was unfortunate, but he fought hard, had a great preseason. I'm like, hey, he finally made the roster. Good for him. He's going to showcase his ability as a young receiver and really, get an opportunity to see what he can do. And then James Jones is cut by the Raiders, signs with the Giants, cut by the Giants, and all of a sudden Ted Thompson and Mike McCarthy are like, hey, we know him. We're going to sign him.
Right. And does anybody understand the whole released by the Packers, cut by the Raiders of all organizations, then cut by the Giants, who, yes, granted, they have a pretty decent wide receiving core. I don't really see why they need James Jones, and I know I'm going to get crap for this. I'm already getting crap for this from all my friends. Somebody just commented on Periscope saying, "Why James Jones is what the Packers need?" No, James Jones is not what the Packers need. You know what James Jones is? James Jones is like shooting the whole organization in the foot, because what you're doing now is you're having one problem. You're taking Miles White out of the roster. You might have just lost him as a player, because who knows if they're going to be putting him on the practice squad. And other wide receivers now that aren't going to get this opportunity for this veteran that has butter hands. People are saying, "Oh, he's done all this great stuff, and he's caught all these touchdown passes." Okay, yeah, he caught 14 touchdown passes
one season.
But to me,
he's never gone over 1,000 receiving yards.
Right, and I mean that's not a big deal.
It doesn't define a wide receiver, but it certainly helps for bargaining rights.
Yeah, definitely, and he doesn't put up gaudy yards, and in my opinion, I don't really care about touchdowns, because touchdowns can be very situational. Like if you're on the 1 yard line, it doesn't really prove sometimes your worth as a wide receiver, or definitely if you get if a defender trips or something and you're wide open in the end zone from like the 5 yard line. And that goes for your stats. Oh, I'm so good. One more touchdown. But then for yards, you have to consistently be good. And James Jones has never been, consistently all that good. People think he's great. I think he's absolute trash, garbage. I hate him as a player. And somebody was arguing with one of my friends on Facebook saying he was just so key in the playoffs. And I'm like, no, not really. He dropped some key passes in the playoffs that could have lost Packers games. And late in the season, he dropped touchdowns or passes over the top that landed directly into his lap that he let go right through his hands. To me, he's a drop machine. And that's what I really don't like about him. That's my number one problem with James Jones, that he's pretty bad with catching.
Fair enough. And we haven't seen James Jones in terms of the sample size that we've seen over the last few years with the Packers. We didn't get to see him. We didn't follow him closely with Oakland last year. We didn't get to see what he did in the preseason with the Giants, although obviously being cut by two different organizations during the course of just a few months is obviously a key indicator of just how good or not his talents are right now. So
how can you be that good and be cut from two organizations? That doesn't make any sense.
I'm saying it all depends on how good or not he is. I mean, if you be cut by two organizations, and the main argument that I have heard from so many people is that he's a Ted Thompson guy. He's a Packers system guy. He knows the Packers system. He's done it before. He played with the Packers for so many seasons. He played with them for 7 seasons, for goodness sakes. He was drafted by the Packers back in 2007. He knows what it's like to play with Aaron Rodgers, with Coach Mike McCarthy, therefore giving him an advantage over 3/4 of the guys on the Packers wide receiver core right now. He's even got more of an advantage than Davante Adams. Now, will James Jones come in and be the second wide receiver alongside Randall Cobb? Possibly.
I don't care. I hate Davante Adams as well for the same reason.
They're more than likely it's going to be the fact that it's going to be Randall Cobb in the slot, Davante Adams on one side, and James Jones on the other side. That's just the reality that we're looking at right now. Ty Montgomery and Jeff Janis didn't do enough in the preseason to assert themselves to say, hey, look, we deserve to be. Well, apparently the heavens are arguing with me because we
apparently
just had a smash of lightning outside the studio.
Jeff Janis disagrees.
Well, I didn't want to
Baxter.
argue with the big man upstairs, but apparently maybe he's got one of them on his fantasy team this year. Anyway, wow, that was just very well timed. Well done.
It was a large crack of lightning in the thunder.
I just was like, or maybe they will do well.
Never mind.
So sorry,
but no, James Jones, I think it's going to stump the growth of younger players. He's just going to take up too much time on the field when he's just a washed-up old receiver, and people are thinking he's the answer. And no, you're just overlooking the fact that he is a butterfingers drop machine that is old now. He's just not what the Packers need. And I was just so upset when I heard this because you hear all these things about Ted Thompson never goes out and gets free agents.
Well, yes.
And then, this is a little bit different because he's been a Packer for almost all of his career except one, which was last season.
Last season.
And, so I understand it's a little bit different of a free agent, but you had your 53 squad. You were pretty much set in wide receiver.
You were fine. I was content with Miles White at the quarterback position. And one thing that I think is interesting that someone just brought up on Periscope is, Reggie Wayne's a free agent again. Well, yes, Reggie Wayne asked to be released by the Patriots. So it wasn't that he wasn't good enough. He was like, look, number one, the Patriots organization is way too hardcore, and I don't want to deal with this because I just want to play football, and you guys are just intense. Number two, if he asked to be released, that means he's not as dedicated as playing the game anymore as he used to be. I don't care if it's the Patriots organization or the Browns organization. If the player comes to the head coach and said, look, I've had a great time, but I just don't want to play anymore. It doesn't matter. No coach is going to want that type of player on their team, regardless if you're a Hall of Famer one day or not. Reggie Wayne, he's not going to sign with the Packers. He's not going to. He's probably filling out his retirement papers as we speak, which is fine. And I think he should go out on top while he has the time. Right.
And Packers were rumored for looking for veteran wide receivers, and that's a big reason
why it's James Jones.
Yeah, why people were pretty sure they were going to pick him up. But I'm just like, you know what? You're fine. You have Randall Cobb. You have kind of Davante Adams, which
he's enough.
We're not getting. He's the younger version of James Jones, in my opinion. Still pretty awful. And then you had 3 talented young wide receivers, either rookies or second-year players. So I think and they were doing pretty well. Jeff Janis could make some ridiculous
He played
catches.
some great games
Miles
in
White
preseason.
had that one absolutely disgusting catch
He did.
in preseason when it doesn't matter if the guy was second string. It doesn't take much. I could go out there and pull somebody down, get a pass interference, and he still made the catch. So I don't care if it was a second stringer or a third string guy. He was still like on his butt being tackled and made a one-arm catch. So that's so pretty great. I think the Packers are hurting themselves here. You'll see by the end of the season that I'm right.
By the end of the season, I think we'll find out sooner than that.
But yes, I
think
I guess.
come the bye week, that's usually that time of the season when you really get an idea. So let us know what you think, though, about all the James Jones debacle and the 53 guys that made the Packers roster. You can let us know on Twitter. I'm at Baxter Colburn. He's at Grant's Rant BGSS, or just shoot us an email too, bgsportshow@gmail.com. We're going to head to a break. When we come back, Bleacher Report's David Kenyon will be here to offer his fantasy football advice for week 1 of the NFL season. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be right back. This is the Baxter Grant Sports Show. Welcome back to the Baxter Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Grant.
Or as Grant likes to go by, the James Jones hating bad person as he is. No, I'm just kidding. You don't mind.
No, I
if
mind.
It comes
I
down
mind
to
greatly.
a game-winning touchdown, and James Jones makes a Odell Beckham Jr. catch over the top
because
of
he's
a
trash.
defender. And he wins the game, and the Packers have a great comeback victory against the Seahawks at Lambeau Field. You will be singing James Jones' praises.
Then he will earn my respect. But he hasn't done that yet.
Before we bring on David Kenyon, what does James do? What does James Jones have to do to earn your respect back?
James Jones, what he has to do is he has to first take pressure off of Randall Cobb. And if he's the third wide receiver, the number 2 wide receiver. He just has to divvy up the pressure and also take pressure off Eddie Lacy. If he can do that, if he can sustain himself in the passing game for not being Butterfingers and not being a pretty trash route runner as well, he has to, he's not an awful route runner. I'll take that back. He's pretty decent and he's got some good speed. I'll take that back.
Sure. He ran a 4.5 at the combine.
Yeah, I'd say he is B+, B- route runner,
anyway,
somewhere in there.
What does he have
anyway, what he has to do is he has to sustain himself in the passing game as a top wide receiver, and he has to also not drop key pass plays, because that's what he did. That's what he did a lot when he was with the Packers. That's what I remember all the time watching him, is that he dropped the ball constantly. So that's what he has to do, in my opinion, to gain my respect.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your laying it all out there for us.
I am open for him to welcome.
Well?
Yeah, I hope he does well. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, it is time to bring in David Kenyon of Bleacher Report and the Sports Knot. Welcome in, David. How are you this morning?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Good to have you. Well, it is Tuesday, David, so that means you have some fantasy football, hopefully advice for us that not only benefits people across America, but Grant and I as well, as we try to do our best in our fantasy football league this year. So opening week is upon us, and Thursday night begins the madness, and I'm curious to know what tips and advice you have for this upcoming week, David.
Well, I'm looking at two games in particular that are going to be big points, and that would be Thursday night's game and Monday night's Philadelphia Eagles against Falcons.
Okay.
And that's because all four of those teams have shaky defenses at best, and especially in the Thursday night game where you have Le'Veon Bell, and Martavis Bryant out for the Steelers.
Yes.
And LeGarrette Blount and Brandon LaFell out for the Patriots. Rob Gronkowski and Julian Edelman are great. Obviously, they're in your starting lineup every week anyway, but if you even considered replacing him, don't, because Tom Brady, and by the way, first time I've been on since Tom Brady has been back, Tom Brady is in there, and that makes my pick look even better, but we're not talking about that right now.
Yes, for those of you that don't know, David was was the guy that drafted Tom Brady in our fantasy league and Le'Veon Bell, and will subsequently pound all of us into the ground now because of that. So Grant is excited to take you on in Week 1, David, because of
I can't
Brady
wait to
now being
win.
Active. Who? Okay. Honestly,
What?
you think you have a chance?
Do you think I don't?
I don't know. David, does he have a chance against you with his lineup?
We'll get to that.
Okay. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, Grant.
All right.
No worries. All right. So then for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Antonio Brown, he's the obvious play. He's a first-round pick.
Yep.
You're not going to take him out of your lineup. But then Marcus Wheaton, Ben Roethlisberger hyped him up in the offseason and said he's the breakout star. I don't think he is necessarily, but he is one of the only options they have at this point. But Keith Miller, tight end, you might have him on your team as a backup, but he's a starter this week, that's for sure. And then on Monday night, the 6:55 game, Sam Bradford, really like him. The problem with Bradford, if you're going to start him, he better be your best option, because DeMarco Murray is going to get touches. Ryan Matthews should get touches at the goal line. So Bradford might not throw as many touchdowns as, say, his counterpart, Matt Ryan, who's leading an offense with a very interesting running back situation. I like their running backs. I like the Falcons. But Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman have been hurt during the preseason. So that leaves more catches for Julio Jones, even Roddy White, except I haven't seen his status for sure. I need to check on that because he had a minor procedure done. But Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, Jordan Matthews, Nelson Aguilar, those are all good plays this week.
Now, David, I have a quick question for you concerning the Eagles and people not really knowing what exactly they're going to do with their players getting specific touches. Well, like people concerning fantasy, they're concerned about putting Philadelphia players out there because they don't know like how many plays their players are going to get. So do you for sure start Eagles players? Or like if you have somebody that you're kind of on the fence with, do you go with them and see how the Eagles do? Or do you just risk it and go with an Eagles player?
Well, it really all depends on what your options are to replace them. Because if you look at running back, if you spent a first-round pick on DeMarco Murray, you probably can't bench DeMarco Murray.
Right.
And at receiver, I'm not concerned. Jordan Matthews and Nelson Aguilar, they're a little bit better than Riley Cooper, and by a little bit, I mean a lot of it.
I was going to say
So
probably a
they're
lot
going
more
to-
of it. Yeah.
They're going to get targets, and that's what you want. If they're going to get 12 and 8 targets, as I expect, I mean, that's 9 and 6 receptions, if that's 75%, and that's a pretty, I guess, conservative guess against a really bad Atlanta secondary overall. They do have one good cornerback, but can't stop two guys at one time.
Fair enough. 2 questions for you from me, David. One involving the 49ers-Vikings game this coming weekend. The 49ers offense seems to be so back and forth right now in terms of, will they be productive? Will Colin Kaepernick or Vernon Davis or Torrey Smith or Carlos Hyde, will any of those guys really be good this year? And we talked a little bit about that a few weeks ago. But they're going up against the Vikings, whose defense has substantially improved, I'd say, over the last even 2 years. Is this the type of game where if you have any 49er players that you probably just want to not bother with them, or is there an opportunity for any breakout stars against I'd say a younger Vikings defense, but also experienced at the right positions?
It's a really interesting situation to the effect of I have no idea what's going to happen because San Francisco's offensive line is so bad. So bad. You look at a team like the Packers or the Cowboys, and they have the benefit of great offensive lines for their quarterbacks. And the 49ers have some good pieces on offense. They have Anquan Bolden. He's in a deeper league. He's a flex option. That's fine. He's not going to get explosive plays. Torrey Smith, he's a solid play. He'll get a lot of targets. Vernon Davis, I don't know. He frustrates me because he was so good a couple of years ago, and then he was just so bad last year. So I don't know what to expect from him. And then I'm wavering on Carlos Hyde because, seriously, this might be the worst offensive line in the NFL. So I just don't know how many running lanes he's going to have against that strong Minnesota front. And Kaepernick, he's just going to have to deal with the secondary, like it or not.
Right, and the Minnesota secondary is kind of being hyped right now as possibly one of the breakout units that, we have the Legion of Zoom, and then you've had the Legion right, and yeah, now we've had the Legion of Boom. Now there's talk about the Minnesota secondary being something possibly like that nature, but with them being so young, we can't say anything for sure, but that's kind of what it's looking like. So, yeah, do you put any wide receivers out for this game, and you want to test that Minnesota secondary?
Well, considering it is Torrey Smith and, like you said, Anquan Bolden as well, I almost like my odds better. Correct me if I'm wrong, David. I like my odds with a Minnesota secondary over having to trust Torrey Smith or Anquan Bolden or even Vernon Davis, honestly, for trying to put up higher numbers than that.
Yeah, definitely. If you have other options, say you're thinking about like an Eric Decker maybe on your team.
I've seen projections that Decker might have a good opening. Okay, one other question for you. I feel like this is an age-old debate, and it keeps going back and forth, but is it worth it at all to have Jay Cutler on your fantasy football team for any period of time? Yes, and yes. Okay, why is that? Because I feel like some people have this bad notion of Jay Cutler, and I'm curious to know from a fantasy perspective why he's not a bad option.
The wonderful thing about fantasy football is the player can be overall pretty bad and be a great fantasy football player. Now, that's just because, especially in the Bears' case this year, they're going to be bad, and bad teams lose. So bad teams are losing in the fourth quarter. Bad teams need to throw the ball in the fourth quarter. Jay Cutler is going to throw a lot of passes this year.
That makes total
That
sense
makes
to me.
sense, yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, he's throwing to Alshon Jeffrey. He's got Martellus Bennett, Matt Forte. He's got good options to throw the ball too, and what those guys do with the ball after they have it in their hands is yet to be seen, obviously. But that basically makes for some good points because I feel that I found it interesting. I was looking through our league, at least as of last night. I was looking, and Jay Cutler was still available, and I was like, oh, okay. And I just thought that would be an interesting question to direct towards you, just to see if that was if the debate was still, because people are like, oh, I would never have Jay Cutler on my team because he's a bad quarterback. Well, for the points that David just brought up, though, it makes far more sense. So before we let you go, David, let's take a look then at your game. You take on Grant this coming week in the opening week of the Bax and Grant Sports Show Fantasy Football League. How do you stack up against who Grant is throwing out this week?
Grant, I like it for a competitive standpoint. You might be a little surprised by that, but my team, two of my main guys that I did draft on purpose, and that obviously I knew what was going on, but Le'Veon Bell, he is suspended. Arian Foster is out. Alshon Jeffrey, I'm not positive if he's going to play because John Fox has been calling him day-to-day for about 3 weeks, and that's a rant that I could go on. If you gave me a spot for Grant's rant, I would go off on John Fox. But anyway, so I have Tom Brady, Latavius Murray, T.J. Yeldon, Des Bryant,
I wanted.
Mike Evans.
I wanted T.J. Yeldon, the pick before you picked him up, like right before me, and I was not too happy with you.
You want to trade for him? We can trade.
We can talk about it. We'll see.
We'll file all the paperwork. Just make sure the transfer request goes through before midnight. Otherwise,
I'd be
lose
open
the paperwork.
for it. I'd be open. Oh, I see what you did
Yeah,
there. I see what you
had
did
to bring that in there. So, but yeah, it looks like you're stacked up fairly well. I do like your receivers. You have Des Bryant, Nelson Aguilar, and Mike Evans, David, as opposed to 3 decent receivers for Grant. He's got Emmanuel Sanders, Golden Tate, and Mike Wallace as well.
The big difference with Grant's team is he does have Rob Gronkowski to my Delaney Walker at tight end.
Comparable.
That's a pretty clear advantage for Grant. And with New England having LaFell out of the game, Gronkowski is going to get even more attention. And that doesn't mean the Steelers are going to stop him. So Gronkowski could be a 24, 25, 26-point game if he gets 2 touchdowns. And then it's going to be pretty interesting because then his team is more high upside. Mine has a high floor, which means I pretty much know the minimum I'm going to get, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get a lot more. But he has Andrew Luck, Emmanuel Sanders, Rob Gronkowski, guys who could just explode. So it'll be a pretty fun game, I think.
The big question mark with my team is the running back situation.
Yes, yep.
Because I have 4 questionable running backs. I have Bishop Sankey, Isaiah Crowell, Todd Gurley, who is out for the first game, which that's been also one of those back and forth things with injury. And then Ryan Matthews. And I've been wanting to play Ryan Matthews, but my big concern is how many touches is Ryan Matthews going to get?
Is he going to get you enough fantasy-wise? That's
right.
The real question.
Like, he might be overall good for the team very situationally, but I don't want to put a player out there who situationally gets the ball, gets maybe 10 touches a game.
It's almost like playing the Vegas lottery in terms of like, well, I'm going to put my money on Ryan Matthews. Let's see if the 10 times he touches the ball during the game, he does something positive for big yards or scores.
Yeah, or does he just get, like 2 or 3 yards for the first down for the Eagles, but that gets me jack squat for my fantasy team.
Yeah, definitely. And on your team, I'm definitely putting in Sankey because their backup, David Cobb, just got put on IR, designated to return. So Sankey is the number 1 right now. He only has to deal with Dexter McCluster, who's really been turned into a wide receiver.
They'll be fine.
Antonio Andrews, a rookie with limited touches, and they traded for Terrence West, who might make an impact soon, but he's only been on the team for a few days, and I don't expect week 1 from him.
Exactly. All right, well, David, we appreciate your insight today, sir. Always a pleasure. We look forward to hearing from you again on Thursday, as we will have you offer a little bit of a preview for the Packers-Bears game, but also just talk about the upcoming week of football as a whole and what games fans want to be keeping an eye on. So always a pleasure, sir. Keep doing what you do, and good luck this week in fantasy football.
Thank you.
David Kenyon, a good friend of the show, our football encyclopedia, as we love always chatting with him, and just a fun guy to have around as well. So keeps Grant and I on our toes. And
always.
So we're going to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to chat about the Milwaukee Brewers. Yes, I know you feel like a team that's not going to make the playoffs doesn't deserve any airtime. But
hey, they could. They've been 7-8 in their last games.
They've got
if
one
teams
player,
start losing.
They've got one player that we want to just briefly hit on, a young guy, a pitcher named Zach Davies. We'll be right back. This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show. Welcome back to the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Grant.
Well, Grant, it is a Tuesday edition of the Bax and Grant Sports Show. We've had a good show thus far. We talked about the Green Bay Packers roster cuts and James Jones in more detail than I think most Packer fans decided to deal with. But, you know, we still love you for that, and don't judge you for it as much as you think we
No,
might.
I'm a realist. So that's just what I'm going to go with.
Okay, fair enough. I'm a let's see what happens list. I'd like to give people chances. That's why I was on the Jeff Janis and Miles White train for a while, because I was like, you know what, Miles has fought hard. But we're not going to get into that.
You know what? I
We're
have no choice.
We're switching
I
sports.
have no choice but to give him a chance. So you can't say not giving him a chance.
Okay, well, we're going to switch
choice.
sports now and go over to DairylandExpress.com or Fansided.com, one of their exciting websites that they have, and talk a little bit about the Milwaukee Brewers' young pitcher that has been recently called up. His name is Zach Davies. He looks about as old as my 11-year-old brother. He, however, is a Major League Baseball pitcher, and he also collected his first victory last night as well in the major leagues in a 9-1 pounding of the Miami Marlins.
Right, and it looks like to be a pretty decent trade. The Brewers just recently picked him up from the Orioles, traded him for outfielder Gerardo Parra. I only know him as Parra. I don't know his first name. But Parra was kind of below par. If you know what I mean. In my opinion, I mean, he was good enough to trade
That was awful.
thank you, for Zach Davies, who he looks like a pretty decent pitcher, and it's kind of been the curse of the Brewers organization when it comes to players, but especially pitchers, that they play for the Brewers. They're okay. They trade them away, and when they're on other teams, they go absolutely ham. So hopefully for the Brewers, it's kind of looking maybe based off of this wasn't his first performance. His first performance was a little rough.
Yes.
He didn't pitch as well. He allowed, I believe it was 4 runs.
It wasn't terrible.
He walked 4 people. That was the big thing.
It's the first game nerves. I mean, that's
right.
totally understandable.
But then this game, he comes out and he pitches 7 innings, only allows 1 run.
Which is huge.
3 hits. So
nothing wrong with that.
No,
the Brewers put
perfect.
up 15 hits against the Marlins, and you can make the. I mean, the Marlins, they're 57 and 81. They're not pushing for a playoff spot.
But then also what happened was a lot in that game. Marlins Stadium is huge. Their field is giant.
They have a massive stadium.
It's pitcher friendly more than hitter friendly.
Yes.
And the article I was looking at was saying that if they were in Miller Park, which is a lot, it's more hitter friendly. Mm-hmm. Than some other stadiums, that there would have been a couple of off the walls or home runs that could have been an even bigger blowout. But yeah, Zach Davies had run support going for him, and he didn't need 9 runs. He only needed the 2, but he only threw 92 pitches in 7 innings, 62 for strikes. The thing that people had a little bit concerned with was he had 13 ground ball outs. He only had 4 strikeouts.
Interesting. Okay, I can see where that's a cause for some concern.
But for me, I'm not really too concerned with ground ball outs because the Brewers have a pretty decent defense. That's not a big problem for them. They have pretty decent gloves. And some pitchers are like that. They pitch low, and that was another comment about Zach Davies. Jonathan Lucroy was commenting on it. The new manager this year, Craig Counsell, was commenting on it, is that he kept the ball low, and that gets you, consequently, a lot of ground outs more than strikeouts if you keep the ball low. And he's just more of a player that way that, a batter might get a bat on the ball, but it's not going to do much. So it's just up to your defense to do it. So I'm not concerned with that whatsoever. If you can pitch 7 innings with 1 run consistently, who cares if you keep getting ground outs? Because that, if you give up a base hit, is a better opportunity for double play balls, stuff like that in general. So, not concerned with him. Good pickup for the Brewers if he's consistent with this type of performance.
Absolutely. Well, one other thing fast about it, Ryan Braun was even offering some comments about him, too. He said, his pace is incredible. That's the type of guy you love to play defense behind. He works so quickly that as a hitter, you never have a chance to settle in. So he said you see other pitchers, they take their time. They really try to focus themselves and then throw it. He said Davies, quick guy, quick release, keeps the game moving along, which is great.
And, well, the MLB loves that because they're trying to shorten up their games as much as possible. Exactly. But another really good thing to take away from this is for a new pitcher, you don't know how the chemistry with the catcher is going to be, and you need very good chemistry. From the comments that Zach Davies was saying, Jonathan Lucroy is the Brewers catcher, they have a really good chemistry, and he said, I just trusted Lucroy with what pitches because he knew the batters really well, and so I just went up there. If there was a pitch that I was like, okay, fine. Went up there and threw it, and he said he just trusted Lucroy with most of the pitches, and he said it worked out great.
And that's exactly what you need to do. So congratulations to Zach Davies on his first MLB win. So let us know how you think Zach Davies is going to end up panning out for the Brewers. You can contact us via Twitter at Baxter Colburn, at Grants Rant BGSS, and at BG Sports Show as well. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Connor Christensen's on the line to offer his fitness tip, and we'll wrap things up as well, talking about the weekend that was not very fortunate and fun for Big Ten teams as well in college football. We'll be right back. This is the Baxter Grand Sports Show. Welcome back to the Baxter and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Baxter.
And this is Grant.
I don't know why I don't know how to pronounce my own name.
You did that last time,
okay,
too.
You know
said
why,
your last name, and that threw me off.
You know why I do it? Because, first of all, there's two different reasons. First of all is that I host another show that I say, hi, I'm Baxter Colburn, so I say my full name. But the other reason is because, Grant, we had the opportunity to call a college football game this last Saturday.
Yes,
and
we
I
did.
would say, hi, I would say Baxter Colburn as well, and I'd introduce you as Grant Coppersmith. So
I'm surprised you didn't introduce
there was
us
one
as the show.
time I came back that I
you
was
looked like it. There was a look on your face. I forgot to ask you about it, but you
there was one
gave me a look, and
I was like, "Welcome back to Lakeland football on LakelandMuskies.com. I'm Baxter Colburn. This is not the Bax and Grant Sports Show because none of you know what that is. We're going to talk about college football now. Okay, thanks. Moving on. No, it wasn't. It was fun. It was a good time. But anyway, it is Tuesday. Unfortunately, it's supposed to be Monday, but it's not because we took the day off yesterday.
Labor Day.
But thankfully, we were able to connect with Connor Christensen, and he was able to make time in his horrendously busy schedule to come on the show today. So, Connor, thank you for joining us today and offering your fitness tip. How you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Oh, not bad. Surviving the cloudy and rainy weather that is outside, so we're happy to be inside.
Yeah, same here. I'm having some allergy issues right now, so I apologize if I'm a little groggy or anything, but I'm excited to be on the show again. I always love being on. So.
Well, we appreciate you being on. So we're excited to hear what you have for your fitness tip this week. You were giddy about it when you were telling me about it a few days ago, so I'm excited to hear what you have. So the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah. I was giddy about it because it's something that is very important for an inspiring athlete. Or aspiring athlete, not inspiring. I suppose it could be inspiring, but aspiring
depending on how you view
athletes. Exactly. People don't talk about it much, but everybody does it. So I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about why it's important, and I'm going to just go into some details about it.
Sounds
so
good.
What I'm going to talk about today is how to be a better athlete as a whole. I've been going off of this theme, how to be better at certain aspects of different sports.
Okay.
Focusing mainly on football. But today we're going to go total athlete here. How can I be a better athlete? And today I'm going to talk about flexibility. Now, people do it all the time in their warm-ups, static, dynamic stretches, running around. You see people warming up, and that is awesome. But here's why. So there's the obvious, you want to get the blood flowing so that your body's warm when you start doing these intense exercises for practices or for games or for whatever. You don't want to have quote-unquote cold muscles when you do that because you could potentially tear something or hurt yourself or, whatever. But there's another reason to be flexible, and that is that it's a term that I actually came into contact with recently that I really like. And it's called, it helps prevent muscle viruses. And that was, so I heard that and I was like, oh, that's good. Like that's a good way of describing it. So, well, let's talk about let's give an example of this.
Yeah,
muscle
please.
virus.
I'm curious to know. Is it just another term basically for like an injury?
It's a term that you won't find in a textbook or anything like that. It was just some random personal trainer. He's not a random personal trainer. He's a big guy with something called Strength Camp. They're strongmen competitors.
Okay.
And so strongmen are the guys that pick up heavy things and walk around with them, basically. Oh. Yeah, well, pretty much. But if you've ever seen the giant stones, the giant boulders.
Oh, yes.
So that would be a strongman event.
Okay.
Or like a keg walk where you pick up a keg in both hands and you walk a certain amount of a certain yardage or whatever. So they all do things that try to prove how strong they are, aka strongmen. But this guy talks about the shoulder joint, which if you know anything about anatomy, the shoulder, the arm goes into the shoulder joint and it's supposed to sit perfectly dead center in the shoulder joint, and it should be able to move freely across every range of motion that your shoulder is anatomically supposed to be able to do. So these muscle viruses, they come in and they pull on the shoulder joint in certain directions. And for example, if you're working the front part of the shoulder, if you work that more than the back part of the shoulder, you'll have a shoulder joint that is pulled forward. Now, if you can imagine the shoulder joint kind of scraping against the forward part of it's called the joint capsule. That's what is surrounding the ball and socket as the arm goes into the joint. So if you imagine that if it's pulled forward, you can't have a certain range of motion. You can't be as flexible going back. And if you think about if you can't go back as far, people like throwers are going to have a lot harder time throwing the ball. Things like that. Or if you're a lineman and your hips, if your hip joint, which is another ball and socket, if you're having a muscle virus there, if you're pulling on something there, you can't, explode off the line as well. So being flexible not only helps you prevent injury, but it also allows you to be free in your movements. And if you're free in your movements, you're going to be able to. It's kind of like building a foundation for which you can add strength. So once you're free, then you add on the power, and then you get stronger. You're able to do these exercises. You're able to do the motions. You're able to do play the game better. So yeah, that's the whole muscle virus thing is kind of like a problem with movement or motion that is caused by imbalances in your muscles. And being flexible helps you to kind of cancel out those imbalances.
Interesting.
So
wow. Okay.
Flexibility, normally I take it as not to get injured, because I'm very heavily focused on that mindset of how can we play the game to not get hurt.
Yes.
But today I decided to focus more on how can we be our most free to move, which does help you not get hurt, but at the same time, freedom of movement is completely different.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing the insight today with us, Connor. I'm sorry we have such a shorter segment with you today, but we appreciate the insight, and thank you for hopefully helping prevent some future shoulder viruses or just muscle viruses as a whole. So we're looking forward to having you again on the show on Thursday as well for your Fight Corner.
Thank you. Sounds good.
All right. Enjoy your week, and good luck to your Vikings this weekend.
Oh, they're going to do great.
Looking forward to it. Monday night against the 49ers. Don't miss it.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Connor Christensen, always a pleasure, sir. Enjoy your day, and we'll be talking with you again on Thursday.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, we're going to go to another break. When we come back, we're going to briefly look at the weekend that was for the Big Ten. Not exactly the most impressive opening weekend, Grant.
Well, I mean,
depends on how you
we'll
look
talk
at it.
about it. We'll
exactly.
talk about it.
We'll be right back. This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show presented by Sports Radio America. Welcome back to the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Grant.
Well, Grant, it was not an impressive weekend on some standards for the Big Ten this last weekend as we get ready to wrap up another edition of the Bax and Grant Sports Show. We just want to briefly hit on the Big Ten games that took place. So on Thursday night, September 3rd, we saw Michigan and Utah. The Harbaugh reign began in Michigan, but it was not a good start off for Harbaugh, unfortunately. They lost 24-17 into the hand of Utah.
Yeah, and I mean, that was with a Michigan team that was already struggling, that people weren't really expecting much out of, but there were good things that we did see. So in the quarterback position, Jake Rudock, he did fairly well. He was 27 for 43, 279 yards with 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He did fairly well. And also wide receiver Amara Darboh, 8 receptions, 101 yards with 1 touchdown.
That's comparable.
That's good things that you want to see from your offense. So there is good things coming out of this game. Obviously, not the win that they wanted, but still, They had a decent start to their season. Not many people were giving them the benefit of the doubt, so I think they did pretty good with what they had.
They did. One other thing I wanted to mention, too, not necessarily about this game, but in terms of a Big Ten game, was TCU beating Minnesota 23-17. That was the number 2 team in the country that Minnesota hung with for most of the game.
And they were close to taking them out, so I don't think that was upsetting at all. I think Minnesota, if anything, might have brought TCU's ranking down a little bit for making that close. So I think that was really big for Minnesota and proving that they're an underdog and that people aren't giving them as much credit. What is it with Minnesota football that people aren't giving them as much credit?
Don't sell the house on them yet. Michigan State, they beat Western Michigan 37-24. Kent State and Illinois was postponed after lightning. The Badgers lost to Alabama 35-17, which really didn't surprise too many people, I feel. Northwestern beating Stanford. That was a big one.
That was huge.
16-6 victory for them. Iowa beating Illinois State 31-14. Maryland beating Richmond 50-21. Rutgers beating Norfolk State 63-13. Illinois pounding up on Kent State 52-3. Temple, I didn't even know that Temple was in the Big Ten. Oh, no, they're not.
They're not. They beat
Penn State 27-10. BYU on a last-second Hail Mary pass. That'll get you every time, beating the Cornhuskers 33-28. Indiana beating Southern Illinois 48-47. Marshall beating Purdue 41-31. And then last night, we saw Ohio State take out Virginia Tech by a score of 42-24. So, multiple different takeaways that you can have from this weekend, but still a good performance as a whole. So thank you so much for tuning into another edition of the Bax and Grant Sports Show. We very much enjoyed all of the guests that we had on the show today. Grant Coppersmith, it was always a pleasure having him in the studio with me. He has to scoot off as he does every Tuesday and Thursday to get to class, so I get to do the final closing little bit here by myself, which is fine. I get to have a moment of uninterrupted radio time. It is a great moment, but I love him, and I will miss him dearly. So we'll see him tomorrow on the show. Thanks to Connor Christensen for his fitness tip today, and David Kenyon of Bleacher Report and the Sports Knot for offering some fantasy football advice as we head into Week 1 of the NFL, which begins on Thursday night. Remember, if you ever want to listen to the show, you can check us out Monday through Friday from 7 to 8 a.m. Central right here on Spreaker.com, and you can also listen to us from 11 to 1 Central on SportsRadioAmerica.com, Live 365, and tune in. And you can get us anytime on demand on iHeartRadio, on iTunes, and on Spreaker.com as well. Social media on Facebook, The Bax and Grant Sports Show. Twitter, we are bgsportshow@gmail.com. I'm at Baxter Colburn. Grant is Grant's Rant, BGSS. You can also find us on Instagram at BG Sports Show as well. If you ever have any comments or questions or concerns about anything we talk about on the show, let us know. Drop us an email, bgsportshow@gmail.com, or shoot us a tweet as well. We love hearing from you, the listener. Special thanks to all of you watching on Periscope. We appreciate all of you for watching and listening. And for all of you that listen to the show as well today, enjoy your Tuesday. We'll see you all tomorrow for a Hump Day Wednesday, as we have another exciting edition of the show planned. Looking ahead for the week, David Kenyon, he'll be back again on Thursday. Grant's got his rant tomorrow. Corey Plath will be on the show tomorrow also talking about concussions. Simon Mitchell will be on the show on Thursday to talk about the Euros 2016. And then we have a packed show on Friday. Kirsten Erb, pardon me. Grant's got his rant, Name 5, Sam Wallace, and so much more. You're not going to want to miss it. The Bax and Grant Sports Show. You never know what's going to happen. For Grant Coppersmith, I'm Baxter Colburn. Remember, if it happens in the sports world, it's probably going to get talked about here on the Bax and Grant Sports Show.